Okay, so today we are looking at an immersive first-person narrative script simulating a journey from Earth across intergalactic space directly into the supermassive black hole at the center of the Andromeda galaxy.
It is quite the trip.
It really is. And I mean, the material makes a strong case for its cinematic ambition right away, with all this vivid imagery and a truly grand sense of scale. But right out of the gate, we do run into a structural issue.
Yeah.
The narrative pacing experiences a jarring shift when transitioning from realistic physical scales to faster-than-light travel.
Right. And where this script fundamentally stumbles is in how it handles the physical laws it establishes in its own opening pages.
Oh, totally.
Because early on, the text meticulously builds this really profound sense of scientific reality. It specifically notes that it takes 8 minutes for light from our sun to reach Earth.
Which is a great detail.
It is, and that when we look at it Andromeda in the night sky, we are actually looking 2.5 million years into the past.
Right, so we are grounded in the real physics.
Exactly. These aren't just fun trivia facts thrown in for flavor. They serve a crucial narrative function. They establish a firm contract with the reader that this universe operates on tangible, awe-inspiring, and immutable physical law.
But then that changes.
Yeah, because then, right in the middle of crossing the intergalactic void, the script simply bypasses these established rules with a sudden, unexplained declaration. It basically just says, quote, "We're traveling faster than the speed of light."
It just skips the mechanics completely.
Entirely. I mean, this abrupt mechanical shift breaks the immersive, realistic spell that was so carefully constructed in the opening.
Right?
By just waving a wand and saying, "We are going faster than light," it suddenly makes the unimaginably vast expanse of space feel like it was conquered effortlessly.
It feels a bit like watching a meticulously crafted stop-motion film that suddenly cuts to a cheap live-action green screen.
Oh, that is a great way to put it, yeah.
The rules of the universe we just bought into are broken and the illusion shatters. But let me challenge this for a second.
Sure.
Because I can understand why an author might make this choice. I mean, is there a risk that dwelling on the mechanics of faster-than-light travel might severely slow down a narrative that is desperately trying to reach another galaxy? Like, the argument could be that the focus should be purely on the destination and not the exact physics of the engine getting us there. If we pause to explain warp drives and relativity, do we kill the pacing of a script that is essentially a cosmic roller coaster?
I see that concern. I really do. But we have to ask ourselves, does speed have to equal a lack of detail?
I guess not.
Right. I mean, the engine itself, the very act of breaking the fundamental speed limit of the universe, that should be a source of immense narrative momentum rather than an expository slowdown.
Because it's a huge deal.
We are talking about tearing the fabric of physics. So to fix this, the author needs to integrate the mechanics and sensory experience of faster-than-light travel so it feels like a deliberate, awe-inspiring phase of the journey.
Instead of just a shortcut.
Exactly. It shouldn't just be a simple plot device used merely to cross empty space. We don't want to turn this into a textbook on theoretical physics, obviously, but the visceral sensory immersion cannot just turn off when the ship goes fast.
So, practically speaking, how does an author do that without bogging down the script in exposition?
Right.
Like, what are some concrete ways to execute that on the page so the pacing actually accelerates?
Well, you can ground this in actual observable physics to maintain that hard science tone while heightening the sensory experience.
Okay.
For instance, the author could describe the visual distortion of entering this speed. When you approach the speed of light, you experience the Doppler effect visually.
Oh, like what sound, but for light?
Exact. So the script could describe the stars ahead blue shifting, meaning the light waves literally compress as the ship catches up to them, turning the star field into blinding, continuous arcs of intense, high-energy, ultraviolet light.
Wow.
Yeah. And meanwhile, the universe behind them stretches and fades into a deep, invisible red.
That paints an incredibly violent, high-speed visual without needing a physics degree to understand the sheer force of it. You just see the light bunching up in front of the windshield.
Exactly. It's a sensory detail rooted in reality. Or, I mean, looking at it from an auditory perspective, they could emphasize the absolute dead silence of the cabin, contrasted with that visual violence outside the window.
I love that contrast.
Yeah. And another approach to add a brief narrative, acknowledge the sheer technological marvel of what has happened. Like the narrator could treat the ship's incredible acceleration with the same quiet reverence they give to the celestial body.
Just acknowledging that they are outrunning time itself.
Yes. tearing through the vacuum in a way that defies the millions of years of natural history they literally just described. And, it can also be reflected in the prose itself.
How so?
Well, when grounding the listener in the 8 minutes of light travel, the sentences are methodical, very paced. But when we hit faster than light, the sentence structure could fragment.
Oh, I see.
The prose could literally accelerate. By treating the transition as an event, a monumental crossing of a threshold, the vastness of space isn't diminished, it is actively engaged.
That makes a lot of sense. And once you physically outrun light, you inevitably start to outrun human context.
Very true.
And that brings up how this author handles the existential dread of being that far from home. Which leads to our next point, the philosophical reflections on humanity's insignificance. While initially poignant, lose their emotional impact through thematic repetition.
Yeah, this is a big one. The narrative stalls emotionally because it hits the exact same existential note multiple times.
Right.
When the protagonist first looks back at Earth, the script beautifully notes how our tiny planet carries, quote, every argument, every love story.
Which is a great line.
It is a deeply effective, classic, pale blue dot scent. It grounds the beginning of the trip in a recognizable humanity. But then later on, as the journey reaches deep intergalactic space, the narrator mentions again that out here, our problems, quote, lose their weight. And then shortly after that, they observe that it's hard not to laugh at how serious we are about lines on maps and human pride.
So it's just the same realization, just pasted into a different sector of space.
Precisely. Repeating this identical message about human smallness and triviality at different milestones prevents the underlying themes from growing.
Yeah, it gets a bit repetitive.
The physical journey is pushing deeper and deeper into the unknown universe, dealing with billions of light years and trillions of stars. But the philosophical takeaway is stuck at the starting line. The emotional scale isn't expanding alongside the physical scale.
Okay, but I want to push back on the idea that we need to move away from our insignificance.
Oh, sure.
Because if the physical scale is growing to 2 trillion galaxies, shouldn't the feeling of being a microscopic speck naturally intensify?
Right.
By focusing on something else, do we actually risk overlooking the grandeur of the cosmos itself? If we try to elevate human importance, we might lose that sense of the sublime. That perfect mixture of awe and terror.
I agree that the feeling of being microscopic should absolutely intensify, or at least transform rather than just repeating the same phrasing about lines on maps.
Right.
To remedy this stagnation, the author should evolve the philosophical takeaway as the journey progresses into deep space, actively moving the emotional arc from those initial feelings of isolation and insignificance toward a profound sense of interconnectedness or cosmic rarity.
So it has to go somewhere.
Exactly. The narrative needs an emotional trajectory that maps directly to the physical trajectory.
So if the physical journey goes from our tiny solar system to impossibly large galactic clusters, the emotional journey has to reflect that expansion.
Yes.
What does that evolution actually look like in the prose?
The author has a few really strong paths here to build that evolution.
Okay.
During that first look back at Earth, keeping the reflection on how small our daily conflicts are is perfect. It works. But later, when the protagonist is looking out at the trillions of distant galaxies in the observable universe, pivot the narrative.
How so?
Instead of repeating how trivial human problems are, focus on how miraculous it is that a fragile, temporary species from one tiny blue world possesses the consciousness to comprehend this grand scale at all.
Oh, wow. So we might be physically microscopic, but our capacity to observe makes us the universe's way of thinking about itself.
Exactly. We become a vital, waking part of the dark.
I love that.
Yeah, the sheer improbability of our existence becomes the focal point rather than our smallness. And another fantastic avenue involves the impending collision between the Andromeda and Milky Way galaxy, which is a major plot point in the text.
Right.
The author could use that galactic merger as a metaphor for inevitable connection.
Because those 2 galaxies are hurtling toward each other right now, gravitationally bound?
Yes, they are literally destined to collide and merge. So instead of focusing purely on isolation, the script could illustrate that even on a cosmic scale, across millions of light years of empty, dark, isolated bodies are ultimately drawn together.
That's beautiful.
Gravity pulls everything into a relationship. That shifts the tone from a repetitive, slightly nihilistic view of our insignificance to a deeply unifying realization about the nature of existence.
It really transforms the dread into a kind of structural beauty.
It does.
But what if the author's intent is to lean heavily into cosmic dread? I mean, a lot of deep space fiction relies heavily on that horror of being totally meaningless.
And that's completely valid. But if the goal is cosmic horror, the theme still must evolve.
Right.
Instead of moving from we are small to we are connected, it could evolve from we are small to we are entirely unwatched, forgotten, and actively being erased by the scale of time.
Oh, that's dark.
Very dark. But you see, the repetition of the phrasing about arguments and lines on maps is the core issue. Whether the arc bends toward hope or absolute dread, it just needs to maintain forward momentum so the listener feels the psychological weight of the distance traveled.
And that physical and emotional momentum is ultimately hurtling toward a very specific, incredibly dangerous destination in this script.
Oh, yes.
Which brings us to our final point. The final encounter with the supermassive black hole misses an opportunity to build escalating tension through the established mission control framing.
Yeah, I have to say this stands out as the most significant structural gap in the entire piece.
It really does.
Because the narrative smartly sets up a communications premise at the very beginning. You know, it opens with the classic audio cue, quote, "Cosmic Wanderer, this is mission control."
A great hook.
It is, and then it pays that premise off at the very end with a simulated signal loss and a relieved, "We thought we lost you," when the ship finally emerges.
Right.
However, during the actual terrifying descent toward the supermassive black hole, this framework vanishes entirely.
It's as if the radio just gets turned off during the most important part of the flight.
Right. And don't get me wrong, the text provides incredibly rich, scientifically grounded visual descriptions of M31 star, which is the designation for the black hole at the center of Andromeda.
Right.
It describes the glowing ring of fire of the accretion disk in the event horizon, where light bends and space warps into a sphere of nothingness.
It's super descriptive.
Highly descriptive. But the tension remains purely observational and static. The protagonist is falling toward the most destructive, chaotic force in nature, facing extreme gravity, massive tidal forces, and intense radiation. Yet the narrative reads like a calm museum audio tour.
Like a detached observer looking at a painting?
Exactly. It completely lacks immediate visceral stakes for the character sitting inside that ship.
Yeah.
The structure promises a dialogue with Earth, but delivers a silent slide presentation at the climax.
Okay, but I want to aggressively play devil's advocate on this point.
Bring it on.
Because the silence here might actually be the entire point. The sheer, terrifying visual poetry of the event horizon in this draft is stunning. Like the description of the darkness that, quote, refuses to reflect anything back is incredibly powerful.
It is.
So is there a risk that adding mission control radio chatter during the climax might completely ruin that poetic observation? I mean, we are staring into the absolute abyss. Do we really want a noisy action sequence with alarms and shouting when we could have a moment of sublime silent terror?
I hear what you were saying, and that is the exact friction the author needs to navigate.
Okay.
Silence is absolutely terrifying, but only if we know what we're losing to get.
Oh, wow.
If it's just quiet the whole time, the silence has no contrast. The terror of a black hole isn't just that it's visually dark. It's that it actively strips away everything that makes sense.
Yeah.
It tears apart matter, time, and human connection. So to fix this structural gap without losing the poetry, the author should thread the communication breakdown gradually through the final descent to actively escalate narrative suspense and give the protagonist immediate visceral stakes.
So using the degrading connection to Earth as a measuring stick for the physical danger they are in.
Exactly. We don't want to drown out the visual poetry with chaotic blockbuster action dialogue. Instead, the loss of communication should feel like a creeping, inevitable suffocation.
Right.
The profound silence at the event horizon must be earned by slowly, agonizingly stripping away the noise of home.
It's the difference between walking into a naturally quiet room and having the air slowly sucked out of the room you're currently in.
Yes, exactly that.
So how do we build that gradual suffocation into the script seamlessly?
There are several ways to implement this tension, like as the ship approaches the bright, violent ring of the accretion disk, which is essentially superheated gas traveling at a fraction of the speed of light. The author can weave in fragmented, static-filled audio cues from Earth.
Okay.
Mission Control could be attempting to warn the traveler about the intense radiation spikes, but their calm, clinical voices are slowly being warped, stretched, and eventually swallowed by the gravitational
gravitational interference.
That creates a brilliant contrast. The cold mathematical telemetry from the safety of Earth juxtaposed against the raw primal chaos of the black hole.
Right.
It highlights how useless our terrestrial science is when faced with a singularity. And think about the physics of time dilation here.
Oh, absolutely.
As the ship gets closer to the immense gravity of the supermassive black hole, time for the protagonist slows down relative to Earth.
Yeah.
The author could use that mechanically. The radio transmissions from mission control would begin to distort, not just from static, but temporally.
That is a phenomenal layer to add. The voices from Earth would compress, becoming frantically fast and unintelligible as the protagonist's local time slows to a crawl.
Yeah.
It's scientifically accurate, but more importantly, it is narratively horrifying. It shows the listener that the protagonist is literally falling out of sync with the rest of the human race.
They are becoming severed from the timeline of the universe.
Precisely. And it doesn't just have to be the radio. The narrator could explicitly note the failing physical systems inside the ship as they cross the point of no return.
Right. Because the ship is under immense stress.
As gravity begins to twist the stars outside the window into a halo, they could mention the navigation alarms softly chiming and then dying out. They could describe the temperature dropping in the cabin or the telemetry screens failing one by one.
Because the extreme gravitational gradient that tidal force is would be physically tearing the ship's internal sensors apart.
Yes. By threading these mechanical and communicative failures into the lush visual descriptions, the eventual signal loss at the end feels like a hard-fought, agonizingly suspenseful climax.
It really raises the stakes.
It makes the danger physical rather than purely theoretical. The cosmic poetry remains, but it is now anchored to a very human vulnerability.
Yeah.
When the screens finally go dark and the radio cuts out, the listener truly feels the absolute crushing isolation of the event horizon.
It's a literal descent into darkness.
Exactly. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today looking at the mechanics of pacing, philosophy, and tension across millions of light years. So, to summarize the core actionable feedback, first, physically integrate the sensory mechanics of faster-than-light travel. So the transition out of hard physics feels like a deliberate, awe-inspiring acceleration rather than a jarring skip.
Right.
Second, ensure your existential themes evolve alongside the physical journey, moving from initial human insignificance to a profound realization of cosmic rarity or inevitable connection. And finally, weave that mission control framework through the climax, using degrading communication and time dilation to build visceral tension during the descent into the black hole.
Yeah, and I just want to say the foundational world building and the sheer cinematic quality of the imagery in the script are already outstanding. Truly.
You have successfully painted a universe that feels overwhelmingly vast. By simply tightening these transitions, allowing your themes to mature, and turning up the dial on the active narrative tension during the climax, this piece will absolutely soar.
It definitely has incredible potential. We warmly invite you to implement these suggestions and submit your revised work back in for another critique. Until next time.